Well, Helga, since you are in the United States right now, which I think is probably good news for the United States, it does bring up a question that, well, around an issue that has been a little bit handled with silence in the last couple of weeks, which I think is partly due to people becoming conscious that what they had hoped to be a positive change away from the catastrophe that was Bush and Cheney to Obama turned out not to be what they expected. Now, I would just like to ask you briefly, and I think a lot of people do have it in mind, what is happening in the United States? The Republican candidates, at least what you hear about them here in the German media, maybe all over Europe, really sounds catastrophic. But Obama, unfortunately, doesn't sound much better. So since a part of the recovery effort that your husband has undertaken for the last, at least for the last decades, involved a strong cooperation between the United States, Russia, and China, what role does the United States play in that, and what is the perspective of that actually happening over there in the U.S.?
Well, there is a unfortunate belated recognition that our estimate of what the Obama administration would be was correct, and that all the people who believed that Obama was the great messiah who would cause change and all of these things were wrong, is now becoming a common understanding. There were people who drew up all the violations of the American Constitution committed by the Obama administration, ranging from the terrible health care reform, which is a kind of a triage system, to undeclared wars of aggression, like in the case of Libya, which was not okayed by the Congress, which after the Constitution would have had to happen, to the targeted assassination of people around the world. I think since January 2009, the United States has engaged in more than 4,500 targeted killings with drones and other means, including American citizens. The illegal detention of people without due legal process, the kidnapping of people into foreign countries, all of this is going on, and people have recognized this is everything Obama campaigned for against in his election campaign in 2008. And he is now doing the same thing what Bush and Cheney did, even more of the same. Even Cheney came out in a talk show recently and said, "Oh, I congratulate Obama, because he's doing much better than Bush and I," and he admitted it. Now, there is right now a complete paralysis in the United States, because while my husband has demanded since quite some time that the only way how you can stop World War III is by making an impeachment procedure against Obama. Now, I should explain that, because you see the problem which people in Europe don't consider. They think Obama is the president of the United States, and formally that's for sure true. But the war policy comes not from the United States, it comes from the British Empire. It goes back to Blair, it goes back to the present policy. If you look at all the different steps, it comes from the British government on the one side and the British Empire more generally, in the way I defined it as primarily the city of London and Wall Street. And if Obama would be impeached for the things he definitely has committed, then the war would not function, simply because the British alone are not able to carry out World War III. They need the American muscle. Now, if you would at this point get Obama out of office through an orderly impeachment procedure or some other paragraph of the American Constitution, Article 25, you would completely block this ongoing drive to war, which is very, very fast, and it's building up very, very quickly. Now, because people, except a few, are too coward to do that, you know, now the Democrats say, oh, look at these Republicans, aren't they horrible? And indeed they are. I mean, if you look at the selection of Republican candidates, they have the most crudest ideas, you know, like Mitt Romney makes campaign against Europe. He was a Mormon missionary in France once and must have had some terrible experience. Now he condemns the Europeans every day. Others are having the most ludicrous ideas about the planet. So the Democrats basically say, look, let's capitulate and go for the re-election of Obama. Now, in a crisis like that, if you don't have a candidate who is able to address the most fundamental issues, and Obama has, you know, done all the steps in the opposite direction. He's canceling the manned space travel of NASA, which is insane. I mean, in this moment of galactic threats, you need to increase the research in volcanic precursor research, in earthquake research, in all of things which do need space travel, because otherwise you will never be able to put up the kinds of systems which would be a protection against that. So, you know, if you have no candidate, neither the Republicans say, oh, we want to go to Mars, absolutely, but we don't want to change monetarism. We want to stick with Wall Street. We want to stick with private investment in space. Now, as one astronaut recently said, the idea of private investment for space travel to go to Mars, forget it. Because, you know, I mean, private enterprise will always try to get the cheapest way. And you cannot have that in space travel. I mean, that's exactly why Kraft-Ericke talked about the extraterrestrial imperative, because one positive side effect of this extraterrestrial imperative is that people have to behave according to physical laws. If you become a greenie or you become a dropout, a punk in the middle of your space travel and you want to leave the spaceship, well, you do that one time and not a second time because, you know, the physical principle does not agree with you. So you have to behave rational. And the very idea of the free market system, of free trade, of private investment is exactly against that. So there is no way how in this collapsing world system you will get with private investment to Mars or even the moon. So therefore, you know, it's not only on that, but the present crop of candidates from, you know, Obama to the Republicans simply means there is nobody to lead the United States at this grave moment out of the crisis. Now, there are a lot of people who like Ron Paul because at least he comes out against the war. It's a very good thing. It would be better if more people would do that. So he is to be lauded for that. But he believes in the Austrian school of economics, and that is a real problem. Because he does not believe in scientific principles governing the economy. He believes that everything should be left to the markets. He believes that the state should have no role in the determination. He even attacked Alexander Hamilton at one point. He's against Glass-Steagall. And that, unfortunately, you know, means he's disqualified too, because if you don't go for Glass-Steagall as the absolute necessary first step, you cannot remedy this explosion of the system. So that is why we have run our own slate of candidates. We have 6 candidates for Congress right now who take up all of these issues as if they were presidential candidates. The idea is to have more such candidates. And you can see in the case of our famous taxi driver from Italy, Claudio Giudici, what one man can do in times of crisis, because Claudio Giudici has changed the dynamic in Italy completely by, you know, forcing the Glass-Steagall issue on the table. He was in national TV several times demanding Glass-Steagall. This is now being picked up by the former economic minister Tremonti, who is campaigning for Glass-Steagall in the tradition of Roosevelt. So between Jacques' campaign in France, the campaign for Glass-Steagall in Italy, which has now gotten a new boost because Senator Peterlini has introduced an official bill for Glass-Steagall, and the work our own six candidate slate in the United States is doing, I think you can see the alternative leadership who, in a moment of crisis, could possibly bring the world out of this. So I think, you know, we are in an unbelievable situation because the United States could and should be the nation leading the rest of the world out of this crisis by going back to the Roosevelt tradition. But with this crop of candidates, it will not happen, which is why we are doing what we are doing.